Your success in business is going to depend largely on your ability to communicate clearly and effectively with others. Today, you are in for a treat as I get a chance to talk with Dr. Bill Lampton, a communication expert and his doctorate's in communication. He's going to show you how to overcome stage fright, how to get along with really difficult people, and the best way to equip yourself for the future. All in this particular episode of Agorapreneurs.
Welcome to Agorapreneurs, standing for liberty and freedom, all done peacefully. Now, here is your guide, Terry Brock.
One of the most important parts of business is communication. It's about people connecting with each other, knowing what we're going to say, what we're trying to do, and how we're going to help the other person, and how we can listen to them and learn more from them. And knowing how to do that right requires training. You can't just do it by thinking, well, this is what I think we should do. It's best to study that. And today, you're in for a real treat because I'm sharing with you today someone who has helped me enormously through the years. He's an official PhD in communication, and he is a person who really knows. His name is Dr. Bill Lampton. Bill, it is wonderful to have you with us today.
Absolutely, Terry. Every opportunity to be with you and to share ideas is something I welcome.
Absolutely. Well, now you've got a real PhD in communication. You understand that, and you use it effectively with your clients when you help them in presentations and how to get through and do it. Tell us from a big picture why business you use this communication, why communication is so important in business.
We could spend a long time talking about that, Terry, but I'll mention a few points. One, of course, is just plain clarity. There's so many people, particularly managers, supervisors, and even CEOs, who give instructions. And to them, the instructions are clear, of course, because they know what they have in mind.
And they think that you know.
And they think that you know. But I'll give an example on that. Suppose a manager said to one of his staff members, he calls that staff member in, and he says to her, I want a report on our customer service soon. Okay, what does that mean? What format is the report to be in? Are we going to have a meeting and talk about it? Or do you want a written report? Are we going to have a Zoom call to talk about it? What is the format? And what does soon mean? Okay, does that mean by today at 5 o'clock? Is it 3 days from now? Do I have 2 weeks to work on this? And then what part of customer service? You mean our structure, our policies, or how we treat people, our telephone behavior? So just something that simple, it seems, and the mind of the sender is so clear. But I've said before, Terry, and if you've tried to assemble items that you got through Amazon and then delivered to you, if you've tried to follow the instructions, I've often said that instructions seem to be written for other people who write instructions. and when point. We get back to managers and supervisors and CEOs who give instructions, they may be perfectly clear giving them, but you and I know what needs to happen then. They need to check and say, tell me how you understand this. Is it clear to you? Do you have any questions? Instead of just throwing it at them and thinking they've got it, right?
Absolutely, Bill, you're right on target. Too many times they think because they, as the sender, understand what they're saying. Well, of course, everyone else should understand, but no. You've got to make sure that the meaning is in the mind of the receiver. And you've got to reiterate that and say, now, tell me back what we're going to do. And so what I meant by soon was by tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So, okay, good. Now we know what you mean by soon. You've quantified that. You identified it versus just soon. I think that's it. And that leads to another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you've been able to work with a lot of people. You help them in communicating, which means there's a lot of psychology in that of getting along with people, how to get the job done when you're dealing with difficult people without offending them. You don't want to offend. You sometimes need to be there with them. Sometimes one part of you is saying, I'll tell them what I think, and that wouldn't be the appropriate strategy at this point. So how do you deal with difficult people when it's a particularly tough challenge to communicate with them?
Terry, I was in management for 20 years before I became a communication consultant, speaker, coach. I was in management, vice president of 3 colleges and a medical center. And during that time, I wish I had known early in my career what I learned later. Early in my career, I heard about these instruments that you would complete, and they would talk to you about your communication style. And to be just candid about it, I was very skeptical. I thought, it's just something psychologists thought up, and how could answering 24 questions tell anything about you? And so I dodged those. And then one time in my career, when I was job searching, I went to what we would call a headhunter. The headhunter said after a few minutes, your resume looks excellent. We've enjoyed talking with you. We've just got one more step, and we have this instrument we want you to complete. And so by now, I couldn't dodge it anymore. So I took the DISC, Personal Style Analysis Survey, that we call it a popular test. Yes. And all of a sudden, when I got that report, and this was so long ago, I didn't get it. I got it in a paper handout before they got into technology. And I remember Terry looking at that and thinking, good heavens alive, who has been watching me shave every morning? Who knows me that well? I only filled out 24 little blanks, and they have got me nailed. And not only that, the greater thing was, not only did I begin to see my own communication style, but it described to me the other communication styles. I'm a very high I out of the DISC, and it told me how to relate to those other styles. And I had been missing that all these years. So I became well acquainted with DISC, working through Target Training International. And that's something that I have administered to individual clients and to corporations. And then we talk about what that means in their interacting. So to boil it down, the simplest way to deal with difficult people is, first of all, to understand it's okay for them to be different.
Very important.
Yes, we're not all cut out of a mold. And it does not make them odd. It does not make you odd. It's just, this is the way they are wired to.
Yeah, it doesn't make them wrong either.
That's right. Doesn't make them wrong either. So when I learned that, not only did that help my professional relationships, it helped my personal relationships too. You knew my wife, Sandra, and
yes.
I can still remember when I brought that report home and handed it to her to read. Sandra was not the type to just have a big belly laugh, but when she read my report, she really got on the floor and started rolling around laughing. And she said, have they ever more got you tagged? I said, okay, now we're going to have DISC administered to you.
Ooh.
And I said, now we've got you tagged. Really, couples should have this.
Thank you.
Dating couples should have it. Married couples should have it. Every board should have it. Team should have it, so that we see, gosh, this person over here is always such a rule book Rudolph. They just tie us down. But guess what? They're contributing to the organization because they keep us from going away from our bylaws and our budget and other important items. So it's a great eye opener to me to realize that being different is okay. And the difficult part of dealing with them is simply because we don't understand who they are and how they communicate. When we learn that, we all get to communicate much more clearly and much more constructively as well.
Yeah, Bill, I think you're absolutely right. And that can be particularly helpful when you're dealing with a group of people in an employment situation. You're seeing them every day, working with them. Let me hit you with another one too. Suppose you're dealing with people that you don't see very often, or maybe it's the first time you've seen them and you might not see them again. You don't have time to administer a DISC model and a test to them, but they're saying something and you go, it's kind of not good, or they're not receiving it well. You can tell there's a little bit of friction, but you still need to connect with this person. What kind of things would you recommend so that we can communicate with those people even better, even though we've not known them before and probably won't see them again?
To me, it would be to do your best to avoid confrontation, seek understanding. And you and I, Terry, in every conversation we have had, talk about the power of questions. So if they say something that really runs against our grain, I guess we might say, or something that goes very counter to what we're trying to accomplish with them, this is a wonderful time to say, what is it that brought you to that conclusion? Would you explain to me the benefits of what you're talking about? How do you think people will react if we go in this direction? Questions are absolutely powerful in breaking down the barriers that can in conversation naturally occur.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think that's real good. And those of you watching that, think about that. Just tuck that in the back of your mind. If you need to, go back, rewind and go back there and watch this again. You need to ask more questions. When you run into that person that's particularly difficult for whatever reason, go back and ask questions. Well, why do you think that way? And you have to ask it in the right way. Bill, correct me if I'm wrong here on this, but I think that you wouldn't go, well, why do you think that is different than saying, well, why do you think that? I've just used the same words, but that inflection and intonation makes all the difference in the world. What do you think, Bill?
And in reality, Terry, another point here is that we don't ask those questions in a manipulative way.
Ooh.
We ask them because we really want to know. This is not a script. It's just, and it is not manipulation at all. Many people mistake some of the things we do for manipulation. But for example, you and I didn't wear shorts and a t-shirt today because we knew it's an occasion where we needed to look professional. That is
just like grown-ups do it.
It is not. Yeah, like real grown-up. When we grow up, we can do that too, Terry.
Yeah, someday. I don't think I ever want to grow up, but you're right. Yeah, we've got to be appropriate for the strategy and what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah, and I think that makes all the difference in the world doing that. Well, now another thing I want to do is to tap into that genius brain of yours. You help many people, executives, business leaders who've got presentations they need to make, and they're scared. They don't know what to do, and there's a lot of things that you help them with. We don't have time right now to go into all of those, but one that I know you address very well is how to handle that stage fright. People going, oh, I'm scared. I got the big program. I've got to give this presentation 2 weeks from Thursday, and I'm going to our whole board or whatever it is. They're scared, and they've got a presentation to give. Now, let's assume they know their material. They're competent. They wouldn't have been asked to do it otherwise, but they're just petrified of having to speak. What do you say to that person who has that speech to give? A lot is riding on it, and they're scared to death.
Terry, I could easily give 25 points because I wrote a small book that's on Amazon, 25 Ways to Control Your Stage Fright and Become a Highly Confident Speaker. We don't have time for all 25. But what I will say, first of all, is notice that I didn't say to eliminate your stage fright. I said to control your stage fright. And why do I say that? Because stage fright, if it's channeled correctly, it energizes us. And I use this illustration. We're very close now to the start of football season, pro football and college football in the United States. And what if you went to a game and the teams come out of their opposite locker rooms, and we're accustomed to seeing them come out like that, and they slap each other on the back and they're jumping around and they're yelling. What if they came out and they sat down on the bench and yawned and took a nap? So stage fright, when we channel it, energizes us. And unless we can energize ourselves correctly and channel that, we'll never energize an audience. So the second thing I would say, in addition to not trying to get rid of it, but to control it, the second thing I would say is change your opinion about audiences. Most of us think that audiences are so critical. They're going to be so judgmental. I'm going to assure you, though, and I found this out in many years of professional speaking, audiences are not your critics. Audiences are your cheerleaders. I like to think of it that. Why, Terry? Why are they? Because audiences want you to succeed as much as you want to succeed. You see, when a speaker fails in a presentation, and it's very obvious that they do, the audience is just as uncomfortable as the speaker. So recognize that the audience is very much your friend. And then a third point, and then I guess this is what we mainly have remaining time for. The third point would be, don't think of your speech as delivery. Leave delivery to FedEx, UPS, the post office. Think of your speech as a conversation. This is not something that you're reciting. These are ideas that mean something to you, and you know they will mean something to the audience. So have a conversation with them, as almost as though you just happen to bump into these people at the grocery store and you want to say, hey, I've got something to tell you. Now, obviously, it's a little bit more structured than that. But for the most part, having a conversation with your audience, if the audience forgets this guy or this lady is a speaker, you're in great shape.
Yep, I like that. Being able to connect with people and communicate. Those are gems. You're watching this video now. You're hearing from a man who knows about communication. He's worked with literally hundreds of thousands of people, helping them to improve their communication. You got that next presentation. You want to go back and review this and get a chance to make sure that your next presentation is your best presentation so far. So, Bill, while we got you here, I'm going to really tap into that genius brain of yours, and we're looking into the future. Now, you and I have had a lot of experience. We've been many different places and lots of people that we've talked to through the years. Communication styles change through the years. What was appropriate back, say, in the 1920s or the 1890s, and the way they communicated and talked is different than it is today. And it's going to be different in the late 2020s and the late 2030s. And we go into that as we're looking at, and many people watching this are going to be around. What can we think of? How can we adapt ourselves to be prepared for whatever is coming? And we certainly don't know in the late 2020s and the 2030s and beyond.
Well, I could start by quoting that great philosopher, Yogi Berra, who said, it's hard to predict, especially about the future. But in all seriousness, Terry, I believe what we need to have in mind is that it's okay for what works perfectly today to become obsolete. And I could name so many items that 10 years ago we had to have to communicate. 8-track tapes. I remember so well, as you do, on Friday nights, you'd see your friend down at Blockbuster Video, because that was the way we were going to watch our movies. I remember so well having cameras that cost me $300, $400, $500. And I remember very well when I had to load those into a computer, that was a laborious task. So the word that has become so prominent over the last 16 to 18 months is the word pivot. And it's a very good word. And I think all of us realize that comes from basketball, where a player is dribbling down the court. All of a sudden, the player is blocked and can't keep going that way. So they have to pivot. And that's what we've all had to do. And that's what we're going to continue to have to do. So the main suggestion I would give is to have the frame of mind that what works today and what is a must have today, that's not going to stay the same. And it's up to us to be willing to learn, to adjust, and to go to mentors like Terry Brock, who has mastered every aspect of technology, and say, gosh, Terry, there's this new thing, Terry, and I just don't get it. Find coaches, find people who are in the forefront and go with them. So the main advice I would give, be open for change and connect with and rely on the experts who can help you, because they saw it coming and they're prepared for it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the key is not to think, oh, we're going to learn how to use X, because we don't know what X is going to be. We couldn't have predicted the phones and having a personal phone that is a television production studio and an audio and taps into questions from things around the world. We couldn't have imagined that back in the 60s or 70s. But what we can do is, like you say, if we have the right mindset, and we're able to adapt, we're able to adjust and move along. Matter of fact, I just thought of some while I was here doing this interview. I hadn't planned this before, but just thinking of this, it reminds me in a way of what happened to one of my heroes, Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge became president in 1923 when his president, Warren G. Harding, died. And he was the vice president. So they rushed to see him. He was Warren G. Harding was out in San Francisco. Calvin Coolidge was safely up in Vermont, and he was there. And they had to wake him up at 2 a.m, administer the oath of office, and all that. But then along came 2024, and he made the decision to run for president on his own to be elected. But he was up against people who, at that time, the way to communicate was to be very bombastic and shout and and those kind of things. The William Jennings Bryan
Bryan, yes.
Yep, that was the style back then. That was their communication style. Well, Cal was just known as Quiet Cal, kind of reserved and quiet, and he didn't say a whole lot. Wasn't real talkative. One of the stories about him was that he was at a party and a lady came up to him and said, "Mr. Vice President, I have a bet with my friends that I can get you to say more than 3 words." And he looked at her and said, "You lose." And I thought he would do that. And what he did is he saw what was happening then with the technology, and he mastered this newfangled technology called radio. He knew he was not bombastic, but he could sit down, and he did, on the radio saying, "Well, hello there, my fellow Americans. This is Cal Coolidge, your president, and just wanted to share with you some ideas that I had about da 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 da." And he won the election firmly and by a big majority because he connected. And so here's the point. Learn what's going on out there. Be adaptable and adjust and change. Bill, you've done this so often through your career, adapting, learning the technology, embracing it. And we see what people like those in the past. Cal Coolidge, of course, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a few years later, came along and really mastered that as well with the fireside chats and connecting with people. Very important. So, Bill, as we close down things, first of all, I want to have you let us know how we can get in touch with you. So someone says, "Hey, I need some training and help on that," how they can do that. And then other words that you would give for becoming a better communicator where we are right now.
Well, let's go with that advice. Become a better communicator right now. I believe, Terry, the simplest way to say that would to be more other-centered than self-centered. And this is the case in every realm of business. If you're in sales, if you're going to a job interview, if you are talking with your manager about a problem, if you're hiring somebody, whatever it is, be more other-centered. And certainly that goes into family relationships as well, not just business relationships. So that would be my main advice. If you become the person, and it doesn't happen just automatically, but if you become the person who's looked upon as a good listener, as Terry and I have talked about, as one who can adjust to somebody else's communication style, as we have talked about, as someone who is eager to learn from experts, as Terry and I have talked about, the main key, I think, would be to become other-centered. And I'll let you respond to that before I give my contact information, Terry.
I think that is Jim. That is golden. Those of you watching this, that is the key. Become other-centered. Think in terms of helping them. If you can empathize with them, listen to them more, you're going to do well, not only in business, but in the world and in life. Bill, thank you very much for sharing that. So if someone says, "Okay, I need to get in touch with this guy," what's the best way for them to do that?
Would love for any of our listeners, viewers, to contact me. The easiest way to find my contact information is to go to my website. As the Biz Communication Guy, it's logical that my website is bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go there, check my services for corporations and leaders, and give me a phone call, and let's talk about your communication problems and challenges and how I can help you with them. Would love to do that.
Bill Lampton, I've known you for many years, and you and I have worked together. We've been able to go over some real important conversations. We've laughed, we've cried, we've gone through many events in life together. You, sir, are a gentleman. You help people. You know your material very, very well as a communicator, as a professional, and you've helped many people. Thank you for what you've done here today to help all of us who are privileged enough to hear you and to have you here with us today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Terry. And one of my best steps professionally and personally was getting to know that guy, Terry Brock, through National Speakers Association and the many contacts and calls and lunches and videos and everything we've done since then. I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you, sir. And those of you that are watching this, I want you to just step back for a moment and think about the communication that you have. It really influences your business. It influences who you are. It influences how you're going to get along on a personal level as well. Tap into the genius of this guy. Matter of fact, trot over there to Amazon right now, put a few coins in there and get that book. I've read his books. I've seen what it is. Yeah, you'll spend a few coins and it'll be well worth it for you. That, and then get in touch with him. He has helped many people in a practical, real way. He does it, I know, over Zoom. So that if you're wherever you are, if you've got access to Zoom, he can help you out on that. He can also do it in person, all that. Get in touch with this guy. And we are going to move forward, learning and growing, becoming better communicators all the time. I'm Terry Brock. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for joining us today here on Agorapreneurs. We're all about your freedom, liberty, and being the entrepreneur that you are, reaching out to achieve the goals that you want. Whether you're an entrepreneur on your own or maybe operating within another enterprise or organization, whether you're a solopreneur or part of a much larger enterprise, we are here for you to help you get the skills and the technology, the right thinking of mind, right frame of mind, how to increase your connections, building those relationships in business that matter. Don't forget, we've got the 5K program, help you in creating content, no charge to you. You go over and you can look at that at terrybrock.com/5K. Notice the K is lowercase, and you'll be able to get that information, no charge, and you'll also be able to sign up for the newsletter that we send out, the Agorapreneurs Power Report, so you stay right up to date on what's going on. And if you need to reach me, my email is the best way to get in touch with me, terry@terrybrock.com. Hey, thanks for being with me today. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.